His body was never recovered from the lake after he drowned. And if you listen to the old-timers in town, they'll tell you he's still out there.
Hello and welcome to another bad movie review. This time we're looking at Friday the 13th Part 2. This is obviously a follow-up to the first Friday the 13th, but with a completely different cast of characters and killer. Now, this one takes place 5 years after the first film. Camp Crystal Lake has been condemned. Survivor from the first film is dealt with in the beginning of this film, and that was 2 months after the events of the movie, and then 5 years passes for this one. So these guys are not actually at Camp Crystal Lake. They are at Packanack, which is a new counseling training center. It's not actually new because all the buildings are clearly old, but I guess it's been repurposed, and it's to train camp counselors. It's also on Crystal Lake, but it's on a different area of Crystal Lake. So while it doesn't take place at Camp Crystal Lake, it's still in the general vicinity. Now, they still haven't hammered out the Jason Voorhees lore yet, so this one is still adding on to the mythos, but things do change over the course of the series. In this one, Jason is still horribly disfigured, but we don't find that out for quite a portion of the film. It's not till the last few minutes that we actually get to see his real deformities, and he is still treated very much like a human killer. The supernatural aspects are mostly just the fact that he survived drowning, apparently, and may have come back from the dead. His age is very ambiguous because technically he should be in his late 30s by the time this movie comes around, but they play fast and loose with that because he drowned when he was like 10 or 12, and then that was decades before, and supposedly 1950s. Anyway, so these new counselors are there for training, and we start to see more of these standard slasher film cliches presenting themselves. You got the kids drinking, smoking weed, and of course premarital sex. But despite the reputation of this film series, this movie, like the first one, only has one real sex scene, and it is post-coitus. But the movie does rely on those tropes and is known for those, so people tend to over-exaggerate the amount of time that is spent on that and the amount of actual nudity and sex scenes. This one does have a couple of nudity pieces though. We get to see one set of boobs, one butt, and 2 bush shots. One's quite a distance away. Some notable actors are in this. Amy Steele plays Ginny. She had a pretty decent career after this. Most of these people have done some fan films. A few have kind of disappeared off the radar, but she seems to have had the best career of the cast of this movie. Mostly TV bit parts, but she was also on Powers of Matthew Star, which really surprised me. So it's good to see that she was still working. Russell Todd is best known for this film and Chopping Mall and High Mountain Rangers, and if you were a soap opera fan in the 80s, you probably saw him on Bold and the Beautiful and Another World. Kirsten Baker, who plays Terry in this, was also in Gas Pump Girls, Island Fury, and Teen Lust. Lauren Marie Taylor, who played Vicky, was also in Girls Night Out in a fan film called Friday the 13th 9 Lives from 2020. She was also on Ryan's Hope for a little while, but her film career unfortunately didn't seem to really take off. Of course, we get a reappearance of Walter Gorney, who plays Crazy Ralph, which was cool. And there are some other recognizable faces in this, but Adrienne King makes a cameo. It's just shots from the first movie in flashback, and then a real brief sequence of with what happens to Alice. Now, you would think with a much higher budget, this one would do better because the first film was shot with $550,000 with a box office of almost $60 million. This one, however, not quite so much. It's got a better budget at $1.25 million, but the box office only brought in $21.7 million, so almost half with double the budget. Now, this one really made its splash with home video. It made its home video release in 1981, so after it was already out of theaters, and I think that really works in its favor because while it didn't bring in much in the box office, it seems to have made up for it in home video release, perpetuating the series a lot more and giving it a massive longevity. One thing you'll notice is the kill count is actually about on par. The first movie had about 10 deaths, this one only had 9. So they do kind of trick you into thinking Jason killed the dog, and that's really not there. That was just a clever trick. Now, one thing this movie has is very clearly an inspiration from Italian horror. They use a lot of the same camera techniques that you saw in the first movie, where you're seeing a lot of POV shots, but they're not necessarily the killer's POV. It's just the cameraman, and a lot of times that's done to lure you into a false sense that somebody's about to die. The kills in this one are a little bit more creative and a little bit more of what you're going to see later on in the series, and a lot of that is because it's very much inspired by the 1971 Italian slasher film called A Bay of Blood, which you may also know as Twitch of the Death Nerve or Bloodbath. But Bay of Blood, you can tell the inspirations are here because of the machete that Jason uses is very similar to one used in that film. So are some of the camera angles and stuff like that, plus the impaling of two people post-coitus. And that movie has also inspired a lot of other films around this time that became kind of stock for American slasher films going forward. And it worked out really well. They took the techniques from the Italian film and kind of reworked them a little bit, and I think improved them in a lot of ways. The score and soundtrack are awesome for this one. The plot is pretty thin. I pretty much already explained what the plot was. It's just these counselors supposed to be getting training for a couple weeks, and they start getting hunted. And like the last movie, they don't even know they're being hunted and picked off one by one because the group keeps fractionalizing. Half the group goes out to go to a casino slash bar, and the other half stays behind to have sex and drink, etc. And they start pairing off, and that's when they start getting picked off. So really the isolation of the camp plus the isolation of separating from the group really is a strong motivational dynamic within the film, and really it's not till near the end of the film that anyone figures out that there is a slaughter going on. We do get to see the killer's head from the first movie in this one a couple times. Now Jason is treated mostly just as a deformed recluse in this, and he looks like a mixture of Sloth from the Goonies and one of the mutants from The Hills Have Eyes. So it's still a bit generic, and the ending in this is really, really ambiguous. And it looks like they just kind of spliced something together at the end, like maybe they ran out of money or something. But I think that's probably the weakest part of this movie, is the very end of it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We're not real sure how the survivors survived, because if he's dead, we gotta add a body to that body count. But that's not really clear at the end of this film. So I would say the ending would probably leave some people with a bit of a sour taste in their mouth. But overall, it's a fun slasher flick. It's not as gory as you would think, but the setup for the mythology of Jason is really laid here, but they haven't added the supernatural elements to it yet. We don't see in this film him just like teleporting around the camp or anything. He's actually running around. He even takes the shot to the groin and it physically affects him. Now granted, he is portrayed as being a little bit younger here from what I could tell, with a slightly more gaunt physical appearance. He's wearing overalls, but he looks thinner than he does when like Kane Hodder's playing him, who's a much bigger guy and much more muscular. But it's still a really good movie, and it is a fitting sequel to the first one. It uses a lot of the same techniques and film style. And this one was written by Ron Kurz with direction by Steve Miner. So I think overall they did a good job making it similar enough to the first movie in style, while also utilizing new techniques and new camera angles. And the whole aspect of following someone around with the camera, I think worked really well, because it does throw you off wondering, are we being voyeuristic here, or is this the killer's point of view? Now, it could be annoying at times, but generally it does build a sense of tension. So I would have to say this was in a lot of ways an improvement on the original, and it's a little bit more memorable, but it still hasn't quite nailed down the Jason elements that would follow later on. Still a solid, memorable slasher flick that could have been easily forgotten, but home video really saved this franchise. And things will start picking up in future installments where they work out more elements of it, but it was a pretty fun film, so I'd recommend it. It's rated R because of the gore and the nudity, but you're absolutely starting to see some of the thematic elements that they're going with, and how this is so influential in the slasher movie genre as we know it today, especially with the 80s movies and 90s slasher films. It's nice to see this after several years to kind of get an idea of what laid the groundwork for a lot of the classic slasher films to come, and how the franchise evolved over time. It's definitely worth a watch if you're a slasher fan, and I would actually say this is a better introduction to the Jason franchise than the first movie is, but you have to see the first movie to understand the motivation for this movie. So if you've never seen it, I would recommend it, but you would definitely want to watch Friday the 13th first, because that movie will absolutely be ruined by the first 10 minutes of this one. And this one builds on the first film. Although this one doesn't take place on Friday the 13th like the first movie did, it still is is a good installment in the series, and I would absolutely recommend it. That'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the film, please hit the like button, share it on your social media, and subscribe if you haven't. And hopefully we'll see you on the next one.